Hi, welcome to Making the Most of Microsoft 365 in iOS, Microsoft plus Imprivata. Today's broadcast is an HLS Partners Play presentation. Real quickly, before we begin, we have a few housekeeping items, and then I'll be introducing our guests for today's talk. So let's go ahead. As always, this event is brought to you by the Microsoft Healthcare and Life Sciences Group. You can visit us at https://aka.ms/HLS-blog. That's aka.ms/HLS-blog. And there you can find articles, upcoming events, and other things new this new fiscal calendar year that we're just kicking off here at Microsoft. A couple of housekeeping items, like I mentioned. The first is this. Look, we encourage our attendees to ask questions. We love to hear from you. So please ask as we're going through. We'll have logical stop points where you can go ahead and have your questions that are being moderated, have them addressed. I'll be doing moderation, so I'll see those. I'll be posting those publicly as we go along. I may respond to you directly around some, but we'll queue those up. Any question you do submit will not show to everyone, though, until such time as I publish, just to let you know. Well, we also love to know who you are and where you're viewing from. So if you go ahead and send a shout out in the Q&A, love to acknowledge you. I'll do that in the little live chat window, and we can keep track of that. It's kind of fun to see how far away we have people actually tuning in. The record, by the way, is St. Petersburg, Russia. At the conclusion of this session, just to let you know, the recording will be made available so you can share it with your colleagues, folks that you know. That will be made available again at our blog at aka.ms/HLS-blog, along with any of the resources mentioned by our guests. Last thing, now how to engage with the QA panel. So if you are not seeing this in your browser right now, you will notice that there is a little icon in the upper right. It looks like a dialog box with a question box. You can select that. Once you do, the dialog box will open up for QA. And here you can go in, you can add your name. It's optional. We always love to call you out by your first name if you feel comfortable sharing that. Then ask your question. And we'll go ahead, like I said, queue those up and address them as they come in. And that's it. So we're going to begin today's presentation. Today we have three great guests. I'm very excited. So from Microsoft, we have Randy Nale. And then from Imprivata, we have Wes Wright and Anthony Tedesco. So I want to ask each of those to kind of, Randy, if you want to start, introduce yourself first, and then we'll have Wes and Anthony talk about themselves as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So, hello, everyone. Glad to be here. I am a healthcare technology strategist here at Microsoft US Healthcare. And I've been doing healthcare and IT in one form, fashion, or another for a very long time. I won't say how many years because that'll just mean I'm older even than I look. So glad to be here, and thanks for having me, Mike.
Awesome. And Wes?
Hi, everybody. My name is Wes Wright. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Imprivata, and Randy and I go back a ways. Prior to my time at Imprivata, I was out at Sutter Health as a CTO out there, and we did a pretty decent-sized desktop transformation program out there, and Randy and I got to know each other through that time. And prior to that, I've been, much like Randy, I've been doing healthcare IT for more years than I care to admit, but I'll say it's around the 25-year mark. This is my first gig on the vendor side of the house, and it's great to be taking that first step with Imprivata. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. And Anthony?
Hey, everyone. I'm Anthony Tedesco. I'm a senior sales engineer for Imprivata. I specialize in the ground control / Imprivata Mobile workspace, where we work with iOS devices and Android devices to try to make everything a little bit easier for your clinicians and for your admins.
Great. So thank you, everybody. And Randy, it's in your court.
Thanks again, Mike. So just a quick agenda. We're going to talk just a bit about mobile devices in healthcare workflow. Some of the trends that are going on. We won't spend much time with this. I think everybody knows, but I did want to do a bit of setup. We'll talk about what Microsoft is doing in the mobile space with our Microsoft 365 offering in Teams in healthcare, and then that'll sort of be the end of the setup, if you will. And then I'm going to turn it over to Wes to lead us through, what some of the challenges are as we begin to bring these mobile devices into the healthcare workflow, and what Imprivata is doing to help solve those challenges for the industry, including Microsoft's 365 and Teams offerings. So I'm going to, as soon as I can find my advancement, there we go. Too many monitors here. So again, I promise to keep this pretty short, but I think we could all agree that more and more workflow specific apps in healthcare are targeting mobile devices, right? And I've got just some icons over here on the right to illustrate that. These are two of the bigger, more well-known software providers in the healthcare industry, and you can just see these are direct from the App Store, right, from Apple, and you can see that. And if I were to just do a healthcare category, there would be even more of these things. And so I think we can all agree that mobile in care workflow is a thing, and it continues to grow. And then the other thing I think we're seeing is that this idea of digitizing communication and collaboration around caregivers, allowing them to talk to each other as a team and engage patients as a team through these digital collaboration and communication tools is also on the rise. And then what's super interesting to me is the newer sort of innovative software companies that are targeting healthcare or even going mobile first, where they're just sort of ignoring the desktop traditional kind of workstation on wheels or whatever flavor you're used to, and going direct to mobile. So Wes, I would sort of love your perspective, both as a former CIO and CTO of pretty large health systems, as well as your work at Imprivata. You want to comment on some of these trends and just what you're seeing as well?
Yeah. Thanks, Randy. And as you were going through some of these, I was squinting up real close to make sure we had some of the icons that I think are really driving this. And one that that I ran across when I was at Sutter is that second icon from the left on your second row there, and that's the Epic MyChart bedside.
Yeah.
That's where, and we'll get into this later on, but one of the real worries that we had when I was on the delivery organization side was, okay, I give somebody an iPad in their bed, so that they can use it for their visit. Well, they're gonna put in their Netflix password, and they're gonna check their bank account, and they're gonna leave all kinds of personal information there. So I knew that I needed to logically sanitize and actually physically sanitize that laptop when they were done. And I tried several different ways to do that, and I'm really happy that since I've come to Imprivata, we purchased ground control. As Anthony said earlier, now it's ground control / Imprivata Mobile. We purchased that around January, and man, it's really slick for being able to do that. So I agree with you. I find it really interesting that your last bullet there, that the newer innovative healthcare companies are just bypassing the desktop now and going straight to mobile. I can kind of see why that is. When I was at Seattle Children's as CIO and CTO and then CIO, they're a big lean shop there, and they believe in, and I think more and more healthcare is starting to do this, something called one-piece flow. And that is where you do the work in the place where the work starts, I guess. And I think that's why we're seeing so much mobile proliferation, is that they want to be able to bring that charting, to bring the lookups right to that patient bedside, so that they can do that one piece flow. So whenever they leave that patient room, there's no going back over to the nurse's station to document something, or over to the Pyxis system or something like that. It's all done right there with the patient. So yeah, I don't see anything but more and more mobile devices being used in healthcare for that reason, one, and for that last bullet about your innovative companies there, Randy. I think soon some folks will hit that magic app, and it'll be only on mobile, and everybody will want it. So yeah, it's a brave new world in mobile out there.
I agree, and I didn't intend to do this, but your thoughts led me to, I think also what's driving some of this is the mobile devices are getting more and more powerful and capable. I mean, Surface Duo, again, I wasn't going to plug that, but thanks for leading me to it. But, Surface Duo released today, and if you think about that device running a mobile operating system with 2 screens and full touch and all those kinds of things, and that's just one example of these devices getting more powerful and more capable. So you don't need that full desktop in all situations anymore.
And Randy, I'm still waiting for my eval device for that Surface Duo, by the way.
Yeah, go check the local Best Buy there. Yeah, they have it for you.
Okay.
And I didn't mean to plug them either, but I guess I did. So the other thing that I think, from a Microsoft perspective is, we're targeting mobile, and our Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Teams as a part of Microsoft 365, is delivering more and more sort of full-blown capabilities that you would expect in a desktop application to mobile. Teams is a really great example of that, where even some of the features launch first on mobile because they make more sense in that sort of device context. And we have management tools to help with mobile. We have security tools to help with mobile, and I know you guys build on that, and you'll talk about that later. But then also, this idea of low no-code process automation or care flow automation continues to come up more and more with our customers, as they try to be agile and again, collaborative with their delivery of care. And, those tools from Microsoft also work really well in many contexts on mobile devices. A quick example that there's a public case study about is out at Providence, Swedish, where, during the start of the COVID crisis, they were wanting to keep track of PPE and other things related to, COVID response. And they needed something really quickly. It wasn't going to, hang around forever. They didn't have time to adapt their full, clinical application suite to those custom flows. And so, they were within a few days able to take our low no-code power platform and come up with a quick and dirty solution just to go get that process automated so they could track things. And it again landed on kind of mobile first in many situations, because those are the kinds of devices that made sense in the care workflow. So you guys are probably seeing some of that as well as some of the demand for your Imprivata mobile application. Yeah,
and it just like you, Randy, a lot of it had to do with the onset of the COVID crisis. We saw people starting to use mobile devices in new and unique ways, and I have an example slide on that later on in my part of the presentation. But I have seen over the last 4 or 5 years, when we were working together, et cetera, the advancement in Microsoft on mobile is pretty extraordinary. It kind of used to be you could go, yeah, I can't get to that right now because I just have my phone, and now you guys have taken that excuse away from me, so I'm kind of in a different, I don't know whether to like it or not.
Yeah, so you're welcome for that, Les. I do want to get to your solution in a demo, which I think most people are interested in. But before the last thing before we get to that is I just want to give a quick example. And the example is we were working with another customer of ours, and they were trying to automate and have enable better collaboration around this idea of discharging from an acute care setting, right? And I think, probably anybody on the phone that's been in healthcare any amount of time can appreciate the challenges involved in that, right? You got to have a lot of people working together. You got to have a lot of things checked off. where is the patient going? Are they going to long-term care, home care? Do their family members need to be? There's a lot of sort of coordination and collaboration that needs to go on there. And, frankly, a lot of the existing, clinical workflow tools that are built into the larger, platforms don't handle all of that very well, especially the collaborative pieces of it. So we helped them with a solution. The solution turned out to be really good and matched their use case very well. They really liked it. They started deploying it initially on some surfaces and on some wall hanging kind of larger format units, Surface Hub, that sort of thing. But then, as it started rolling out farther and farther, it started to get in places where, mobile devices are in use. And so they're like, hey, we need to enable this on our mobile devices. Well, the good news is Teams and Power Platform, as I already mentioned, work on mobile devices. But they ran into some challenges with the fact that, iOS in particular, which is our call is kind of about today, it's a single user device, not a shared device. So as they had these shared devices, and they were trying to put, a super, rich application like Teams on it. And now all of a sudden, how do you share the thing? Because when you move the device from person to person, you don't want the previous person's information, and log in and all that sort of thing to be on there. And so, they had some challenges with that. And I know, Wes, that's what your product addresses. So hopefully that's a good segue to sort of talk about those challenges and how you guys help us solve for those so that customers can use Teams in that clinical shared kind of workflow setting.
Yeah, perfect segue, Randy. I appreciate that. Mike, it might be time to see if we have any questions while I share my part of the presentation.
Yeah, Mike, do we have any questions out there kind of with the setup part of this?
Yeah, I mean, well, the only question I have right now is around MDM. I don't know if you want to do that now or tee that up later.
So I think in our demo, we're going to talk a little bit about MDM integration. So maybe we want to hold that one just for a bit.
Yep.
Okay, sounds great. Hey, Randy, you see my slide? My slide? Okay.
Wes, you're good.
Okay. All right. So as Randy was saying, there's a lot of challenges in trying to share iOS devices, and we think maybe we've got that, maybe not all the way solved, but we're in the 80 percentile at least. So, also, to restate some of the things that Randy was saying, the particular challenges in sharing iOS devices, frankly. You've got the device management, and of course, we're always cognizant of your security posture around mobile devices. And then you have an efficiency aspect, which I'll talk about a little bit later on a later slide. And it's not just efficiency with your clinical workforce, but it's also efficiency with your IT workforce. And finally, all this stuff that you're doing with mobile has to be scalable. And the way that you make it scalable is through simplicity. And we think we've done that with our Imprivata Mobile or Imprivata Mobile / ground control product. So we think we've got the shared devices problem licked. From provisioning all the way into application single sign-on. Now, I'll caveat this. This is an iOS specific brief that we have here. And that application single sign-on that I'm talking about there, that's with our Imprivata Mobile for Android product, which essentially lets you tap into and out of an Android-based phone and have your single sign-on, just like you do now with Imprivata One Sign on a shared clinical workstation. But the products that we have help with the provisioning, ground control, the updates and healing. The healing piece is really cool on this, and I think Anthony is going to show us that in a demo here a little bit later. And that all drives efficiency. And because you've got this device management going, you also have a good deal of security around it. So here's the mobile workflow requirements. And like I said earlier, I want to take a look at this from two aspects. Usually we just focus on the clinical teams. And I think that's right. I mean, that's the production line, quote unquote, of healthcare. And so we should focus on them. And what they want is a consistent workflow. Whenever they pick up the device, they want to know, okay, that icon was here. Last time I picked it up, it's going to be there, and I don't have to search around for it. and they want easy access to that application and the tools that they use. And most of all, they're on the bottom. They don't want to be IT people. They don't want to have to manage devices. And I told you the anecdote at the beginning of how I tried to do some MyChart bedside when I was out at Sutter. And frankly, I had put some burden on that clinical staff to where I was using them as some IT folks, and I really didn't want to do that. And I think that's probably why I did not succeed in that project. But now let's talk about that IT and mobile team. Let me pause there. Randy, you got any comments on that clinical teams one? I don't know what you're seeing when you and your folks go out from the HLS side of the house.
Wes, I think you mostly nailed it there, but I will reinforce that there is two perspectives on this thing. From a IT side, especially the security and all of that, it's got to be efficient. Adding mobile devices can't add a ton of cost or complexity because the IT shops they're not growing in the number of people they have or the amount of budget they have or anything like that. And so it's absolutely you got to be able to accommodate these additional devices and workflows and things like that without added cost for people at the end of the day, right? And that's where the simplicity and manageability comes in. But you also nailed this. Even more important is that we're not asking those clinicians to be IT people. Like, right. We can't get in their way. They have to be able to care for these patients. Now more than ever, they got more on their plate with the pandemic. I know we say that all the time, and you almost become numb to it, but it's real. I mean, they do have more on their plate. We cannot be asking them to become, iOS or Android device managers as a second job. So I think you nailed it.
Yeah, I agree. We can't ask them to do that, and they have more on their plate. But I tell you what, that those IT and the mobile teams, I used to say when I briefed folks, IT and healthcare, they got 10 pounds of work with a 5-pound bag to put it in. But with the pandemic, it's more like 15 pounds of work, and they still got that 5-pound bag. So they really got to find a way to be efficient in the management and support of mobile devices. They can't afford to have somebody sitting there with a bunch of iPads hitting the next and the go button and the next button in order to provision these things. One, it's just not scalable, and two, you've got this infection thing that we have problems with right now, and three, most of those IT staff are now at home, so they've got to be able to support these devices from anywhere at any time. So those are the mobile workflow challenges as I see them. And we think we've got them licked. With Imprivata Ground Control, Imprivata Mobile, we've got access to fully provisioned devices with a simple tap of the badge that the clinicians mostly know right now via OneSign. It's the same badge, same badge tap reader that you tap to pull a device. And then when you switch devices or share devices, it's a simple switch. Plug it in and then go. Unplug another one and check it out. And then because of the way ground control is set up, every time you check out a device, you're going to get the best one available, the one that is fully charged, the one that has all the applications that you need to run to do your operations. And I can talk about it a whole bunch right now, but I tell you what, why don't we let Anthony show us this provision and checkout system via a demo. So Anthony, go ahead and start sharing your screen and show us how ground control Imprivata Mobile works. Thanks, man.
Yep. Thank you, Wes. Can you guys see me and hear me well?
You look great, Anthony. You look great.
Okay. I love Microsoft Blue. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, there we go. I didn't even intend to do that. So I'm going to show you two primary workflows that we see in most hospitals nowadays. Now, ground control is an extremely flexible software. We're not limited to just these two things, but I think they're the two that stick the most and the things that your clinicians would go, oh, wow, that actually does improve my day, unlike most software that might go, oh, it's another thing for me to do. So the first thing I want to show you is the concept of a patient iPad. So We've probably all seen these before. I know you can't see the one that I'm showing you now, so it should show right over there on the screen now. So the first thing I want to show you is that we're able to blast text onto the screen to make things a little bit easier for both the patient as well as the nurse. You can actually see that we have where it says at the bottom, patient iPad, ICU. We have an asset tag on there and the serial number. These are dynamic values, and this is really what ground control is about. We automate a lot of processes that might otherwise be manual. To find the asset tag of a device, you might have to look on the side of it, look for a sticker. No, we put that on the front of the device for you. Same thing with serial number or a generic message that you want. Even there are things that we do that other things, including your MDM at times, simply can't do because we have special privileges by being tethered to a computer. So what I really want to show you here, though, is that on a patient device, you would typically have all sorts of apps on here. You would have things like Zoom or FaceTime, Facebook. You might have games on there like Candy Crush or YouTube, ways for them to entertain themselves. The real problem comes into play, though, when the nurse comes back to take the device and maybe assign it to somebody else or set it back up. They have to go into settings, general, they have to reset the device completely. They have to find ways to get this device ready for the next user. Even if you have a system in place that will automatically erase it, they still have to set it up when it's done. They might have to input Wi-Fi information. They might have to make sure the app's downloaded properly to it. Where we come into play with ground control is we make all those processes as easy as plugging the device into a computer or what we refer to as a launchpad. That simple plug, you're going to see in a couple seconds, the device will start to erase. That means that all the patient's data, all of the progress that they have on their apps, all their sign-in data, that will all start to erase on the device, and it'll set itself back up when it's done with that, making it so that the nurse simply has to grab the device rather than trying to figure out, all right, what Wi-Fi do I put it on? What apps are meant to be downloaded on it? All these other things that the nurse really shouldn't have to worry about. That should be something that IT is taking care of by themselves. Now, of course, it's impossible for IT to go around and check every device, look at every device. That's where we come into play. We make it so they don't have to do that. Our whole game here is automation. So you can see the Apple logo showing up. The device is erasing. We'll come back to that later when the device is finished and it starts to get its apps. The other workflow that I want to show, and the one that tends to be the most impressive, is our checkout workflow. So we have here a docking station where we have a few devices, a badge reader. We leverage Imprivata OneSign to track all your users onto badges. And rather than users having to take the device out of the dock, figure out which one has the best battery, like Wes said, we determine all that for you. We make sure that your device is going to have all the apps that you need. All you have to do is tap your badge. So I tapped a badge named to a user called Heidi Davidson. It's going to pick the healthiest device. It's going to light up green so they know which device that is. It's even going to put their name on it, which you'll see right over there. So we have Heidi Davidson. This device may be removed. Very easy for the clinician to know which device is theirs. The device is set up specifically for them and for their roles. So we integrate with your MDM here. We integrate with OneSign. We utilize all these other packages that you currently have in play to make it so that this device is personalized for that user. And more importantly, so that your IT staff knows who have what shared devices, because that's always the biggest problem with shared devices. I come from an environment where we had 20,000 shared devices. We saw 18% loss year over year. That's completely unacceptable, but there was almost nothing we could do about it. With a product like ground control, you know who has what devices, who's losing what devices, and you can make it easier to retrieve those devices because of that. What's more important than all of that, though, is that for your end user, for the clinician, for whoever has this device, even if they're in transport or somewhere else in the hospital, all they have to do when they're done with the device is plug the device back in. The dock will take care of everything for them. Ground control will take care of everything for them. It'll lock back up and be a completely unusable device for anybody who doesn't have one of these badges. I'm actually going to show you what that looks like on the other device in my dock. When you don't have the device checked out to a specific user, it gives you a message saying this device is locked. I'm hitting the home button, I'm hitting the power button. The most I'm going to get out of this device is I might see the lock screen or the home screen. I might see the lock screen. I'll never see the home screen now. So this device is truly locked down. Nobody can use it unless they have a badge that would grant them access. And again, the process to bring these devices back is so easy that all they have to do is act like they're charging the device when it comes to the end user. Plug it in and ground control will literally take care of the rest for you. I know that I just threw a lot of information out there, things about integrations and things about how our product works. I'm going to open it up to questions, and then once questions are over, I'll throw it back to Wes, and I'll be back for a demo again later to show a couple more features. But with that being said, I'll open it up to questions. Anything that anybody has to ask, I can answer for you.
So we have two questions. The first of which is, they're asking, how does the manager handle recovery of the device like you mentioned? I'm assuming that's when you were talking about device recovery.
Self-healing
Right. So
kind of thing.
well, I would imagine it's more like, how do we find out which users have what devices or where those devices were last located? So that is going to be based on which user has it. So we are going to show that a little bit later in another demo where we show that users assigned to the devices, you can see it from a device itself. You can see it from the ground control console. We give you a whole cloud console to work with, so it's very easy to use. And with certain MDMs, we're actually able to further integrate that and show who has what device in your MDM. So you're able to just take a list of all the checked out devices and see, hey, which people are assigned to which devices. And on top of that, if you need additional ways to track down your devices when they're done, and let's say somebody didn't bring one back and you need to recover one, we make it so that we can automatically put lost mode into the devices if they're out for too long. So if a shift is supposed to last 8 hours, you can set it so that at 9 hours, that device will just lock up. That way, if the user still has it, if somebody else has the device, they can simply know, hey, I need to bring this device back because this thing's a brick at some point. And again, I'll show that in a little bit. We're going to do another demo shortly after this one.
Perfect. Yeah, and they followed up and said, yes, who has what? The other question is, which MDMs do you work with? Because you mentioned multiple.
Right. So we have different, technically, we work with any MDM that supports DEP supervision identities. To make that a little bit easier to understand, we work with most major MDMs. That being said, some do integrate a little bit better with us on an API basis than other ones do. As an example, Workspace ONE / AirWatch, we have tons of integration points with because they're an extremely popular MDM. They've been around for a very long time. We actually have featured at VMworld multiple times as a third party, which is very rare if you look into that. But that being said, we also work with Mobile Iron Core, Mobile Iron Cloud, Mass 360, Citrix, Microsoft Intune, Jamf, and all sorts of other maybe smaller MDMs that you haven't heard of or haven't seen before. The baseline theory, though, is that if it supports DEP supervision identities, we can work with them.
But Anthony, Intune is going to be like going forward, it's going to be the one, right?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of, currently today, the integrations with Intune are maybe not as high as we have them with AirWatch or even with Mobile Iron or Citrix, but that is ramping up faster than I've seen it with any of the other MDMs as far as being able to get those features out there. And I'm hoping and expecting to see a lot more of those features coming really, really soon, where it'll actually be on a pretty even playing field with the rest of those MDMs I mentioned.
Yeah, thanks for entertaining me. That was was plugged than anything else. I know you guys are working on it, and I know our customers have, you know, a hybrid environment. So it's awesome that you guys support whatever they have. So thank you.
And that's probably an important note to mention as well, is that even if you have multiple MDMs, we can work with all of them at once. So you don't have to go, oh, well, we have AirWatch and we have Intune. Which one do we want to use ground control with? You don't have to worry about that. We'll work with both of them at the same time. We set up all sorts of automation rules to make it so that we know which devices are meant to go into which bucket or which MDM or whatever you want to do with them. We make that process super easy, even if you had 5 different MDMs. I mean, my demo environment has 7 MDMs. So.
Pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we had one last question earlier. Android was mentioned. What do you do with Android?
So the Android workflow looks considerably different than iOS. Android, we focus on single sign-on, which is a feature that we don't currently have on iOS, but that we're very, very close to and we're going to have very soon. On Android, you don't wind up with these docks, you don't wind up with cables, you don't need a computer. It's a little bit simpler because we're just going for SSO in those cases. You take your employee badge, similar to this, how you would tap it to a badge reader. You simply tap it to the back of the device, and the device will assign to that user. Some of the same concepts apply as far as what we can do with it and what we can't. If I'm being completely honest with you here, ground control is a more feature-rich application. We do a lot more. We give you a whole cloud console. Imprivata Mobile MDA for Android is a little bit simpler. It's more just about getting you signed into your applications, which is an extremely valuable thing to have so that your clinicians aren't sitting there fat fingering passwords in all day. So they're very different products. They work very differently. It's kind of hard to demo them next to each other because they do completely different things today. But we are working on bridging those gaps, bringing more features to Android and bringing SSO to iOS.
Great.
And that's it for right now.
Yeah, that was a great explanation there, Anthony, on the Android part. I agree. They are kind of different animals, and in the MDA, mobile device for Android, is just really focused on the single sign-on and the sharing of the device, just like we do a shared clinical workstation. We just move that concept to the Android. And like you said, we're trying to get feature parity between iOS and Android right now. So eventually down the road, we'll be able to brief the same exact product feature set. So I think Anthony did a fantastic job, actually. Good job, Anthony, of showing you how we can help you standardize the device image, plug it in, and it wipes everything out from the previous user and puts your new image on. And he did mention the cloud-based management console that we have. A lot of folks right now, because of COVID, and they are working remote from home, it doesn't matter to them. They can still update the images and the provisioning and deprovisioning using the cloud console. And I think he's also shown us that this really improves security and data privacy. There's very, very little chance that a device from patient A can get to patient B with that patient A's personal health information or their username and password for Netflix, which they may think is more important, getting over into patient B. So I really appreciate that, Anthony. And right now, I want to take a step back, and this is a customer story that came from COVID that I mentioned I'd be going over at the beginning of the presentation. This is the University of Rochester Medical Center. So COVID came, we all know that, and a couple of things came out of that. You had a bunch of patients. First, hospitals weren't having visitors anymore, period. We didn't, especially if you're a COVID patient. And so that COVID patient didn't really have any way to communicate with their family, with their loved ones. And so University of Rochester said, hey, wait a minute, why don't we give them iDevices, either iPhones or iPads, and let them communicate how they would with their families. I mean, we can take those devices back and put them back into the hub, like Anthony showed you, and give it to the next patient. And that was really well received. And we actually have seen that workflow outside of a bunch of people besides the University of Rochester Medical Center. And then something funny happened on the way to the market. We realized that, hey, that patient has an iOS device. We know what it is. We know the username for it. We know the serial name for it. So when Dr. X wants to go in and see how that patient's doing, rather than have that doctor or nurse go into the room and burn a set of PPE, protective equipment, why don't we just have them do a telehealth consult in the hallway and see how that COVID patient is doing before they enter, to see whether they need to enter or not. And that worked out really well. And then another funny thing happened is that most of the COVID patients had comorbidities. So when they did that inpatient telehealth visit with the patient and their primary care, their primary hospitalist, the hospitalist was then able to say, using Teams, hey, let me join with the oncology provider who's also giving you care, and let's bring us all three together and do a consult and make sure that we're providing the best care we can to you. And I think this is something that we'll actually see proliferate even after COVID, because there's no other way that you can bring all the, especially these multiple comorbid patients. You can bring the radiologist in, the oncologist in, the patient, their family, their son, their daughter if they're older, or their mom and dad if they're younger, and bring them all in using Imprivata Ground Control Mobile and Teams to create this great consult opportunity for the patient. And I actually think that this probably probably improves the state of care that patient is getting. So we're pretty proud of the way that the University of Rochester Medical Center has used our products out there. Randy, do you have any of those kind of stories out there that you can share with us as well?
I do, Wes, but it would mostly be a repeat of what you just said. We have there's two core things that we're seeing around the scenario that you described. So the one you described specifically, we've heard our customers, and so then we've been referring to that as virtual rounding. I know it's more comprehensive than that, but we've got a toolkit now for Microsoft Teams that will allow you to tailor Teams. So it's by a toolkit, I mean, some configurations you can apply, some, operations guidance you can use, those kinds of things to enable Teams for that virtual rounding scenario. So we've seen that, and the challenges around, transitioning the mobile devices do come up. And of course, we've worked together with customers to help solve that between Teams and Microsoft 365 and Imprivata Mobile. So I think, that exact scenario has come up over and over and over again. And, I don't, because of some of the benefits you described, I don't know that it's just a COVID thing. At some point, once we're post-COVID and, we're beyond this pandemic, I think that sort of being able to bring a virtual care team together, whether that care team are care professionals, as you mentioned, or, home caregivers from a family perspective that you also mentioned. I think those kinds of virtual engagements with a broader group of people around care, I think those persist beyond, the pandemic. So.
Oh, I could not agree more, Randy. And like I said, I actually think that's a higher quality of care. At least it's a more collaborative quality of care than what we had pre-COVID. So, hey, if you're looking for a silver lining, there's one.
I think it is absolutely higher quality. I mean, we've all seen the situation where, frankly, doctors are busy. They're caring for a lot of patients. They're trying to give each patient, their due respect and due time, and pay attention to each patient. And so that makes it hard to, get schedules aligned between different members of care teams. And so not having to all show up at the patient's door at the same time, and yet still do synchronous sort of interactive conversations, I think it absolutely does result in better quality care. That's only anecdotal, of course. I'm sure there's research going on about that that we'll be able to point back to at some point. But as a patient, myself, my family, that sort of thing, and having seen that anecdotally, I think it absolutely is.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Earlier in the demo, Anthony, or in the discussion, Anthony mentioned how we can keep track of a device, see if it's healthy, see who has it, as a past due, what's going on with this device. And I want to take 3 or 4 minutes here and let Anthony take over again and do another demo on that device security, that device health demo, and let him go here. All yours, Anthony.
Hey, can you guys see me?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, great. So the first thing that I want to show before we get into that demo that Wes just mentioned is the device that I did before with the iPad, where I was mentioning that the nurse simply has to plug it in. This is that same device. Last time we saw it, it was erasing. I know that we were off screen, but I promise I didn't have to do anything to this device. I had set up the same way that the previous one was, and it's ready for the next patient with no data on it. So if they go to log into Facebook, if the previous user had used Facebook, that information will be blanked out. Same thing with any progress in games or anything they may have browsed in Safari. It's the easiest way for the clinician to be able to prepare a device for the next user. But the real reason we're here in this demo is to go over what happens when a device gets lost, or how you can track devices as they're being used. So I'm going to show you how a user can actually track which devices other users have, because that's just as useful as having the admins do it, since usually the users find out first, and then they make a little graveyard of all the dead or lost devices that they've found over the months or years that they've been out there. So again, we have a device that I just checked out. And I'm actually going to also check out another device. That one didn't want to check out. Okay. So if we go into this device that I have here, we can go into the Checkouts app. We can actually see that the user Heidi Davidson has checked out a device. So if I had more devices checked out, I would see all those devices listed, and it would tell me which users are assigned to them, as well as give the device name. Now you'll notice here that I have the name set as an asset tag, a serial number, and Anthony's desktop. So that's actually the launchpad or computer that the device originated from. These are all values that we set on the ground control side, and then we translate it straight to the device. So you can see that in your MDM, you can see it in ground control, you can see it from the cloud console, you can see it from anywhere that you would need to see this. Now, what's going to be interesting is about 20 or so seconds from here, the device is going to go into lost mode. So we support this API call out to your MDM, where we will automatically set a device into lost mode if it's been out for too long. So you set that time period. It doesn't matter if it's 6 minutes, 8 hours, 12 hours. The device will go into lost mode, as you see on the screen right over there. And until the device is brought back to the station, it's a brick. So again, the device is locked down. I can't do anything with it. I can't use it. It's very clear that the device is lost and needs to be returned. It also might be able to let people know, hey, maybe you've had this device out for too long for your shift. You know, maybe you don't want people to use devices for 8 to 12 hours at a time and burn the devices out so quickly. Maybe you only want them to have a device for 4 hours and then grab another device. We make all that really, really easy, not only for the end user, but also for the IT people to manage. And as a former MDM admin, I definitely would have loved to have this for shared devices back when I was doing it. So again, to return the device, all the user has to do, or the person who found the lost device, is bring it back to the dock or any dock. It does not have to be the same dock it originated from. The device will start to check itself back in and make itself available for the next user. Now, something that I didn't talk about on the last demo is that we do this really fast check-in process, but that doesn't always work when it comes to every app. Sometimes you don't want certain app data to stay on. For example, if you have your users logging into Microsoft Outlook, when you switch users from one to the next in that quick way that I just showed you, their Outlook data might stay, or their Rover data might stay logged into the device. What we can also do instead of this fast switch in is that we can actually completely erase the device as well. Those are options that we give the admins who administer the software for you, and it's stuff that we train you on how to do properly. When you work with us, we make sure that we give you the workflows that you need, that you want, that are specific to your environment. In fact, the iPad demo that I showed you was an exact replica of a hospital that I recently worked with. That wasn't my setup. That wasn't a setup that I created. That was a setup that they created. So just to show you the power and flexibility of ground control, we don't care how you want to do these things. We make it work for you the way that you want it to work.
Hey, Anthony, how long does that wipe and re-image generally take? Just ballpark-ish.
If you do a full erase, it's going to depend a little bit on your device model. For example, an iPhone 6 is going to take longer than an iPhone 10 because they're just not able to erase as fast. In general, we see about 7 to 12 minutes for that by the time the device is ready for the next user to be able to use it. Most of that happens in the erase process, which we have very little control over. And then the most of the rest of it is going to be the apps flowing down, which is very network-based, although if you have Macs, we can actually help with that. But again, that's very specific to the environment. In general, you're waiting for everything to download over the network. So it can take a couple minutes if you have smaller apps. It might take a little bit longer if you have a slower network or a ton of apps. It's very dynamic and it depends entirely on the environment. But in general, 7 to 12 minutes.
So Anthony, that's one of the powerful things though about your entire sort of solution is during that process. And the fact that you integrate with OneSign and through that OneSign integration, Active Directory and Azure Active Directory, like you get to tell people via the device and via the indicator on the dock when that device is ready and direct them to the right device so they don't inadvertently grab one that's not ready or still in the middle of that, right? Is that essentially kind of how it all works together?
That is exactly how it works. So let's say that this first device was going through that process of completely wiping itself and trying to check itself back in. We'd have 7 other devices that the end user would have access to as well. So even though one device may be erasing, that's not going to stop your fleet. And by the time that enough people have grabbed devices, those devices that have been brought back will be reprovisioned anyway. So
yeah, it's pretty impressive. Again, I told you I made a really bad attempt at this, and I was in the hours trying to get my stuff to wipe. Wipe was easy. Reimage was taking a long time. Hey, I really appreciate it, Anthony. Michael, do we have any questions from this part of the demo?
Yeah, we've got a number of things that have popped up. So let me scroll back. Let's see. So, this was from earlier. they thanked you, Anthony, for your first presentation. I'm going to assume they're still thanking you for the second. The next was, how is license handled for shared devices in your example? And they said Teams licensing is murky when sharing device to a patient. Does patient need to be licensed or not?
So the way that we handle licensing as far as these devices, it's a device by device basis. So however many devices you have, that's how we handle licensing. Now, when it comes to things like your application licensing, so Teams or maybe Epic Rover or any other apps out there, that is going to depend a little bit on your MDM and the configuration with that. They are absolutely right. At times that can get a little bit murky. It depends on the app provider's way that they handle licensing. In general, we've been able to work with app developers on things like that. Specifically, Volt in the past had a similar problem, and we were able to work with them to kind of make that a little bit more sense make it more sense for a shared environment. Because a lot of times that's designed under the idea that these devices won't be re-provisioned or won't be re-provisioned very often. But what we're finding is that more places are adopting shared devices. So it's something that the app developers need to look a little bit out more for in the future. But that isn't something we have much to do with, unfortunately. That's more on the MDM and the application side.
Gotcha. I don't know, Randy, if you wanted to chime in because they mentioned Teams, but I'll just say if you're finding it murky, please, please, please talk to your Microsoft account team. There are different requirements for different provisions and how you're using devices, shared devices, etc. But Microsoft is willing to work with you, and we've done so with many customers.
Yeah, I would just echo that, Mike, is that, while sometimes our licensing isn't always targeted at these healthcare scenarios by default, we've been very successful in helping customers, economically get to the right sort of licensing arrangement to accommodate their scenario, even if it's a scenario that we didn't think of whenever we, originally designed the license, right? And so we want to make it work for our customers. We want to give them the ability to use it. And, in many cases, especially for external participants in Teams conversations and meetings and virtual visits and that sort of thing, like, there is no license cost in many cases for those external users. So again, just as you said, talk to your Microsoft account team or your Microsoft partner, and we can certainly make it work for you. Yeah,
and just to, I'm not going to keep harping on that, but yes, we definitely want to help. We want to do the right thing. The last ones, I think these are kind of self-evident that you already addressed them, but they said, so the iPad plug in the same device, the phone docks in, and it looked to me just to be an extension of a cable coming out.
Correct. So there's really, don't get me wrong, there are absolutely special things about the Unidock that I was showing made by Datamation. But at the end of the day, the purpose of it is to be a USB hub. We don't care how you're connecting to the device as far as baseline functionality. It's just that the Unidock gives you a little bit better presentation for your end users. It gives a few extra lights. So if the phone lighting up isn't for some reason enough of an indicator for them, they also have LED lights on the docks. Right. At the end of the day, though, the same concept can be applied to a USB hub.
Awesome. And then I guess since it's working as a USB hub, they could use either the I forget the Apple's connector, that or the USB-C that the new iPad Pros would have.
Right. Yeah, we can connect with any device that can connect to a computer. We'll be able to connect. So.
And then again, I think you already answered this, but it looks like your solution works with more than just the Microsoft apps.
Yes, absolutely. So technically, our solution doesn't do much with the applications. Your MDM is still what brings those applications to the device. So there's not much that we do necessarily with the application itself. But where we come into play is getting you to that stage of having the apps on the device and making sure that everything's working the way that the users would expect it to every time. We also have a lot of fail-safe logic in there. So if you've had problems in the past where certain applications don't deploy to a device, somebody grabs a device and Teams isn't on it, or let's say Rover isn't on it, we have fail-safe logic in our system that when that device gets provisioned or gets checked in, we check for those apps. And if it's not there, we'll actually fail the workflow, start a new workflow, and re-provision the device from scratch so that we can make sure that it does get those apps, even if it didn't have them after the initial attempt.
Great. That's the last questions I have. I did get a 5-minute warning.
Yep.
So I'll turn it right back over to you, Wes.
Yeah, Anthony, I just once again I want to say thank you so much for both of those demos. I think definitely the star of the webinar there. So I appreciate your help there, Anthony.
Thank you, Wes.
Yeah. So Imprivata plus Microsoft gives you device lifecycle management for iOS. Maybe not shared like a shared clinical workstation, but close enough in the environment we have now and coming soon. So I'd encourage you, one, to talk to your local Imprivata rep, or you can go to imprivata.com and figure out who that is. And of course, Randy, I'm sure you want to let folks know that they should, as you and Mike also did already, that they should get in touch if they have any questions about how to bring Microsoft and Imprivata together to manage iOS devices. They should contact their local Microsoft representative as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Wes. As you know, and I'll just state for the benefit of the folks in the webinar, you know, our partnership continues to grow. We continue to do more together, and you know, you could actually reach through either account team or
Yep.
and you know, get to the other one. So we'll come together on behalf of the customer to make sure that, you know, they're getting the solution they need.
Yeah, I really do think that Imprivata plus Microsoft is certainly a better together story in healthcare. And with that, I think we're ready to wrap up. Mike, I'll throw it back over to you and see if there's any other questions that came out of this, or let you just shut us down.
Yeah, so I'm not seeing any other questions. I just want to reiterate to everybody who attended, first of all, thank you to all of our guests. Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Randy. After today's presentation, this recording will be made live. So let me just quickly share. Let's see, do you want to share? Yes, I do, and I want to share that. There we go. So you can reach us at the HLS blog. That's where we'll post the recording from today's session, as well as some links to resources that you might find helpful. And you can find us again, just to reiterate, at aka.ms/HLS blog. That's aka.ms/HLS blog. Be on the lookout. We'll be posting other upcoming events. There are some already listed. For example, we have an upcoming security monthly that's coming up, and there are many other sessions in the making. So please check us out there. With that, again, I want to thank everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And with that, take care and have a great weekend, because that's coming up. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.